is the housing market going to crash in 2021? That's the question we keep getting. Is all right. Hello, everybody. It's Sean Moudry. We are back again for another episode of our podcast, and I want to welcome again my co-host Mo, coming from Cairo, Egypt. How you doing, Mo?
I'm fine. Thank you so much, Sean. How about yourself?
Good, man. I'm good. Good. You taking care of the pyramids out there?
Yeah, I'm protecting them. Yeah.
You know, us Americans, man, we just assume like everybody just like have your own pyramids in your backyard. Like it's like a fiction.
No, we used to it back in the old days when we were actual pharaohs, but now we're
Yeah,
not.
they're like yard ornaments.
Now you can barely find a place to stay at because we're just too many people in just a little place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The city. You mean a city's so crowded?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the population there again?
Total population is 100 million, and the amount of the percentage that are actually occupying the whole Egypt, 7.5 or 7.2% of the whole Egypt has 100 million people. Only 7.2% of the whole place of Egypt. Like Cairo and Giza, for example, those governments combined have 50 million people in them. So it's crazy.
It's crowded, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nuts. Well, we were talking today about the economy, and obviously this impacts the world, right? What we're seeing in the pandemic, it impacts everywhere in the world. It's not limited to just the United States. A lot of economies worldwide have been shut down due to the pandemic, and what we're seeing, which is really interesting, and specifically when it comes to housing, as well as even, we've seen it in the automobile industry, we've seen it in luxury goods industry, is products are getting sold out, right? Everything's getting sold out. And so the big question is, especially in the real estate industry, is the housing market going to crash in 2021? That's the question we keep getting. Is that what you're hearing too?
No, in Egypt you don't want to hear it because it's a totally different case. Exactly the opposite. So it's also
What's that?
still crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy here too. Yeah, the real estate market's crazy. But people assume because it's crazy, what goes up must come down, right?
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about the real estate housing market and what is causing the market to go so crazy right now. What's causing that to happen? And then what is likely going to happen in 2021 as it relates to the housing market? And then finally, how can you prepare, if you're a real estate agent, how can you prepare for a shift in the market, or what should you do, if there's not a shift? So let's get started with that. So starting off first is, why is the real estate market so strong? Why is there no inventory anywhere and there's all these buyers out there buying with a lot of money, right? It's just crazy. We're seeing houses sell for $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 over asking price. And the question is why is this happening, right? So one reason it's happening is just the sheer lack of inventory that we're seeing on the market. And let's face it, if you're a homeowner right now and you're on quarantine, number one, you probably don't want strangers coming through your home. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is, do you really want to move during a pandemic, right? So that's challenge number two. And challenge number three is, if I did sell my house, can I even find another house, right? Because they know that the inventory is low. So we're seeing those three things prevent people from wanting to put their house on the market. And then that's reducing the number of listings, which is increasing the demand, right? So there's fewer, supply and demand, right? When supply is down and demand is high, prices go up, right? Yeah. And so that's the first thing we're seeing. And that's what's causing this spike in the prices. Okay. Now, secondarily is, where is all this money coming from? How do we have all these buyers that are able to buy, and where's this demand coming from? Well, that is a very regional question, right? It changes city to city, state to state, reason to reason, because honestly, there's areas of the world and in states and countries that they're actually seeing a lot of inventory hit the market and very few sales. Like in New York, right? Manhattan specifically, downtown San Francisco, they're starting to see spikes in inventory because people are moving away from the inner cities and moving to the suburbs, right? So they're starting to see, less demand for inner cities, more demand for the suburbs. But for the most part, most areas in America, we are seeing a really high spike in inventory, or a high spike in demand, and very, very low inventory. So let's talk about the money. So in any type of recessionary period, we see there's opportunity and there's difficulty, right? In any type of recession. And right now, if you look at the economy as a whole, the US economy is kind of on a pause right now, right? GDP's down, manufacturing's down. Obviously, if you work in the restaurant or entertainment industries, tourism industries, airlines, all that stuff, sales are down. So the economy's on a pause. But the government is stepping in and they're propping things up. And they've already put almost $3 trillion into the US economy, which is a massive, massive amount of money. And they're giving it to businesses. They're giving it to people directly. They're propping up unemployment and all these things. So there's this term called the K recovery. Are you familiar with the K recovery? Have you heard this term, Mo?
No.
No? So traditionally, when you hear about recessions happening, they'll talk about a W recovery or a V recovery. So a W is where we see a recession, a stimulus. So the recession causes it to go down. The stimulus causes it to go up. You withdraw the stimulus, you see the economy set back down again until industry supports it, and then it comes back up again. Okay, so that's a W recovery. A V recovery means it slightly dips down, and then traditionally in a V recovery, the government's not stepping in. The economy just kind of recovers itself, and it rises back up over time. And those are usually a little bit more short term, right? Like in 1997, we had the dot-com bust, right? And when all the dot-coms turned out not to be, these brilliant businesses, the government didn't step in and prop up all the blue chip companies. They allowed the economy to kind of settle it out, and that was a V-shaped recovery. If you look at 2008, the recession that we saw in 2008, it was more of a W-shaped recovery because we saw the government put money behind banks, which caused us to pull out of the recession a little bit. But then it really took 4 or 5 years before we kind of started coming out of that recessionary period. So that was more of a W recovery. But what we're seeing now is what they're calling a K-shaped recovery. And a K-shape is different because
that's a
what
totally
it
different
means,
letter.
It's what? It's a different letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is like, how do you create a K-shape with a recovery, right? Well, what it means is there's going to be a sector of the industry that is going to continue to lose money. They're going to continue to struggle, okay? And that's the bottom leg of the K. So if you can think about the K, that's the bottom leg of the K. So basically what it means is people that are in the entertainment industries, it's going to be a long time for it to recover. Tourism, transportation, and any of that stuff. It's going to be a long recovery period. It's going to take time. But then people who are in the tech sectors, I would say white collar type jobs, even jobs that are essential, right? Healthcare, utility services, those kind of things. They're not losing their jobs. Their jobs are very stable and steady. So they're the upper leg of the K. So that's what the K is some people are going to get poorer and some people are going to get more wealthy. Okay. Now, I'll just be clear. This is not an ideal situation for recovery, right? Because at some point, you have to correct the bottom, right? And the only way to do that is to give them support and structure to be able to help them kind of move back through. So it might be retraining them, it might be supporting the businesses or supporting unemployment, because we can't have we can't have a society with people just living in the streets, right? This is not functional.
Yeah.
You see that in other countries, right? You see other countries where there's literally an entire sector of society that's homeless, right?
Yeah.
And we're starting to see some of that in America, but really in America, most of us are intolerant to allow that to happen, right? Like we see that that's probably not the society that we want to live in. And so the wealthier people help support the poor people to allow them the opportunity to get back on their feet. That's been our culture. That's kind of how we do it. So that's the K-shaped recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does now.
Yeah. So now let's look at what is 2021? How does this impact 2021? Well, realistically in 2021, I don't think we're going to see a decline in real estate. Okay. I don't think we're going to see a decline in the real estate market. I don't think we're going to see a massive spike in demand or inventory. I think we're going to see similarly low inventory. I know in the area I live in, house prices went up 25% year over year, which is insanity, right? That's insanity.
Yeah.
We're likely going to see an increase like that again, okay? Because we're not going to see inventory, and we're going to see people continue to, the demand's still going to be there to buy a home. So what could change that? I think that's the question, right? What could change that? Because none of us have a crystal ball. None of us know what's coming around the corner or what the next the next boogeyman that comes out to get us. So what could change that? Well, number one, if they raise interest rates. Okay, so if they raise interest rates, it will slow down demand. It'll slow down demand. If we see the forbearances, so right now, if you're in America and you have a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or Ginnie Mae loan, these are loans that are governmentally insured or partially governmentally insured. So they're Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae are quasi-governmental agencies. And in the event you have one of those loans, you can do a forbearance on your house, which means you don't have to make a mortgage payment for up to a year, right? Up to a year, right?
I wish I had this option in here.
Yeah. You should move here, buy a house. You don't have to pay for a year. But here's
I was able to find a house, not just buy it, just find one.
If you could just find one, exactly. So the challenge with a forbearance is a forbearance by design is a short-term solution. It's not a long-term solution. And the balance of that mortgage that you're not paying, the balance of those payments that you're not paying are still due. So borrowers that are taking this forbearances, the payment's still due. Now, last I heard, there was almost 4 million people that are in some type of forbearance right now. 4 million, which is, it's not massive compared to the number of mortgages that exist out there, but it's a big number. That's a lot of people. Okay? Now, at the end of the forbearance, at the end of the 1 year, let's say their house payment is, let's just say it's $2,000 a month, okay? At the end of the year, there's a $24,000 balance that's due. That money has to be solved some way. So they're either going to have to amortize it into the house payment. So they're going to have to increase people's house payments, or they're going to make them pay it due all in full, or they might do a second mortgage and tie it to the balance of the house. So if you owed $350,000, now you might owe $374,000, right, later. So that's really the three options. They haven't said, right? The government has not said how they're going to handle this. Okay, that's the big question. We don't know how they're going to handle this. So if the forbearances come to an end, Okay. If the forbearances come to an end, and when they come to the end, and how the government chooses to handle the balance on the forbearance is going to determine the real estate market at that point. Because let's face it, if you're in a house that's worth 350,000 and your balance goes to 374,000 and your house payment that you couldn't afford at $2,000 a month now goes up, are you going to stay in the house? Right? If you couldn't afford it at 2,000, can you afford it at 22, 23, 2,400? Probably not. Now, the difference is in 2008, when we went into the recession in 2008, interest rates were much higher. Interest rates were 7.5. And what the government did to help homeowners stay in their houses is they reduced their interest rate to 2%, 2.5%, 2.75%, which brought their payment down. So if your payment was $2,000 a month and you struggled making that, they would reduce your interest rate to 2.5% and bring your payment down to $1,200 a month, which made it affordable for homeowners, right? They don't have the ability to do that right now. That's the problem. Okay. That's the main problem, is they don't have the ability to do that, because what are they going to do? Make interest rates negative? They're going to do negative interest rates? I suppose they could. Germany did it, so I suppose the US could. But it's probably unlikely that the US government's going to do that. So how they solve the forbearance situation is going to be really interesting to determine what's going to happen in the housing market. Okay? Because that's going to determine if that 4 million people or 5 million people, by the time they solve this, are they going to be able to keep their home, or are they going to be forced to sell their home, right? Because they simply can't afford to stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Good job explaining this to someone who's not in the market. So yeah.
Yeah. So now if I'm a real estate agent, right? If I'm an agent, what do I do? What do I do? And I'll tell you the best advice I've heard lately, and this is from a friend of mine who is a very, very good real estate investor, and he's a developer, and he's got a lot of money invested in the real estate market, right? And I said to him, how are you feeling about this? Like, are you nervous? Are you worried that the market's going to crash? And here's what he said, and I think this is the best advice for you. If you're a real estate agent, you're listening to this, this is what you need to hear, is play the market that's in front of you, right? Don't look all the way down in the future and start reacting to something that hasn't happened yet, because it might not happen, okay? And the last thing you want to do is overreact right now and get it wrong, okay? So right now, if inventory's low and the market's strong, then that's what you respond to. The inventory is low, the market's strong. Keep helping buyers and sellers buy houses, help buyers buy houses, help sellers sell houses, stay active. If you own investment properties, hold on to them, right? Don't start liquidating. Don't go crazy right now. If the market shifts, fortunately, real estate doesn't drop like stocks, right? They don't go from 100% to zero overnight like a stock does. So if the market does shift, you're going to have plenty of time to respond and react without, losing too much of your position. Okay. That's a nice thing about real estate. It doesn't swing that randomly. So just play the market that's in front of you, right? So right now the market's strong. If in your area, play that. If you're in an area like New York or San Francisco and the market's softer, then you play that market, right? But don't start overreacting to situations that aren't occurring right now. Did we cover that topic?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good and on point advice. And just to add on this point too, it reminds me of what happened with GameStop. So the difference is GameStop, there are too many variables with what's happening in the stock market, as you mentioned. Unlike the real estate market, in the real estate market, it is something that is a physical asset, but also in addition to this, it is something that is not easily, I don't want to say manipulated, but I would say not easily changed as a stock market.
Yeah, it doesn't respond as fast, right? There are
Yeah.
times, in 2008, I think it was October of 2008, where the government stopped insuring jumbo loans. And so jumbo loans are mortgages that are the large, expensive houses, right? So it's, in our area, it would be a house, above like 680,000, right? Might be a jumbo loan. So in 2008, they just stopped insuring them. So if you had an expensive home, a luxury home, it was really hard for your buyers to get a loan all of a sudden. They couldn't get a 5% down loan or a 10% down loan. They had to get a 20% down loan. So it eliminated about 15 to 20% of the buyers. It didn't stop the real estate market completely, but it definitely slowed it down, and it did affect your value. So there are things that can impact a shift and impact a market dramatically, but it doesn't tend to happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
Not in real estate. It's very rare, right? It's very rare. So I would say this, like, again, stay conscious about what's going on in the market. Pay attention to the forbearances. Pay attention to how your specific city or town, how the inventory is and the demand is, right? Migration drives everything. So if people are moving into your town, then you're probably in a very strong, stable market. If people are moving out of your town, then you're probably at risk of having having your market possibly shift. Okay, so migration patterns are really important. And then lastly is just stay paying attention to what we're doing right here, because this is the stuff we talk about, right? So if you haven't subscribed yet to our podcast or our YouTube channel, jump on, subscribe for us, and we're going to keep talking about this. And if you have questions or comments, please, give us your comment, and we'll be happy to share our thoughts and give you some advice. And if you're in Egypt and you want to know about real estate in Egypt, Mo's not a real estate agent, but he'll tell you all about Egypt.
Yeah, I think
How's that?
that's a good plug.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's everything on that topic today.
Cool. Do you have any other advice, like for real estate agents? Maybe things to look out for when dealing with clients at that specific time.
Can you say that again? Look out for what?
Maybe some tips that you have to share with current agents in the current market. Maybe a few things that they need to really take care of when they are working with a client right now, or maybe a few things that they should be saying to their clients right now to set their expectations about what is going to be happening if they going to be doing business together.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind on that topic. One is if I'm working with a buyer and there's super low inventory out there, especially like in the city I'm in, the median home price right now is about 660,000. Okay. So if I have a buyer who's buying, let's say they're trying to buy a home for 400,000, right? There's very, very few. Like literally right now, if you were to do a search, there might be 2 homes available in our entire market area. Okay. So what would I do in that case is I would start looking for properties that are off market, right? Properties that are not in the MLS, where I'm not competing with 25 other offers trying to get my property under contract. And 2 things will happen with that. One is you're going to have a higher likelihood of getting them under contract. They might not get the perfect or ideal house. They might have to give up on some things as far as, maybe they want a 2-car garage and they get a 1-car garage. Maybe they want a basement and they have to settle with a house that doesn't have a basement. But the other thing you might be able to do is be able to get them a house that's below what they would pay for the house had it been on the market in the MLS. So you could actually save them some money. So that's what I would do with buyers. And I think the other question is if I'm a buyer, is the market too strong to buy, and is it going to fall? Okay. I think if I'm a buyer, that might be a concern of mine is, am I buying at the top of the market, and should I buy right now, or should I just stay renting, and should I wait? Well, here's the simple answer to that question is it really depends on how long you're going to be in the home. if you're planning on staying in the home for a long period of time, and I would say long period of time is 7 years or more. Okay. If you're planning on staying in the home for 7 years, then go ahead and buy right now. If you're only going to stay in the home for maybe 2 to 5 years, maybe you decide to wait and rent it out. But the reason that long-term strategy always works is because, number one, you can't predict the market. Okay, you really can't. I'm telling you, I literally wrote a book on predicting the real estate market, and it's very hard to do because there's so many variables, like a pandemic and $3 trillion invested into the real estate market. There's no reason our real estate market should have went up 25% this year, other than the pandemic caused low inventory and high demand, right? That was it. And that caused the real estate market. Now, you couldn't have predicted that, right? The best economist in the world could not have predicted the pandemic.
Okay? Certainly, yeah.
Yeah. So, and most of them that I follow, when the pandemic was announced, were like, oh, there goes the real estate market, it's going to crash. They didn't predict the human response to the pandemic, right? They didn't predict that all of a sudden everybody's going to be working from home and companies are going to say, live where you want to live, we don't care. And people moved out of the cities and into the suburbs. And then people in the suburbs said, I don't want to move. And so demand exceeded supply, right? So nobody could have predicted that. If you are an economist and you predicted that, you're a genius, right? Because the rest of us in the industry. Yeah. So number one is timing the market is really, really challenging. Okay. It's really challenging. So instead of trying to time the market, look at how long you're going to stay in the home. If you're going to buy again and you're just looking for 2 years, you might want to wait, maybe. And then if I'm going to be in the house for 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 years, then think about it like a bicycle going up a hill. The real estate markets cycle up and down, but they're always rising over time because population is still increasing, right, in America in general. And so because population's increasing, we're seeing more demand on properties to buy, to live in houses than there are houses that are available. And so because of that, we tend to see an increase in value over time. Now that's subjective to certain areas too. Like there are parts of the country and countries that are losing people, right? Migration's decreasing. And in those areas, you might not want to buy. If migration is going down, meaning if you look at the US Census data or you look at your country's data for this tracking population, if it's predicting that population is going to decline over the next 5 years, I probably wouldn't buy there myself. I would avoid it, right? Until there's indication it's going to rise again. Then I would get back in and buy.
All right. So what would be your advice for sellers? So that was the advice for buyers. What about the sellers? Yeah.
Well, I think the challenge for a seller right now is, will I be able to find a home? Okay. That's their challenge. If I sell my home, will I be able to find a home to replace the house I'm in? And I don't want to be homeless, right? That's what they think, is they think they're going to be homeless. And there's a couple ways you can protect yourself, okay? As a seller is you can do a contingency to find a replacement home. So contractually in your contract to sell, your contract says, I am not going to sell this house until I find and close on a replacement home, or I find and at least contract on a replacement home. And that leaves you in the driver's seat. That allows you to have control. So that's option number one. Option number two, which is probably a less popular option, but right now there's a lot of real estate agents as well as investors that are willing to purchase your property if and when it's time for you to buy another house. And so that kind of gives you what's called a guaranteed buyer scenario. So that allows you to go out and offer on properties as if you're non-contingent because you already have your house either under contract and or sold when you're making an offer on other properties. Now, this is something that literally we were doing 20 years ago, and we didn't think anything of it back then. They were just simple buyouts that we would do. And today it's kind of normal practice for real estate agents to have either an investor or a company come in as a as either the buyer or a backup buyer, to allow your sellers to be able to purchase non-contingent and close when they're ready, when they're willing and ready to. So that's the other key. But honestly, like, they can protect themselves through the contract too, to ensure that they're not homeless.
Okay. So I think we did cover a few very good points here on the overall topic about the real estate market in general in 2021. So again, the final question once again, and the main question here for the theme of this episode, is the market going to crash in 2021? Yes or no? We've already answered this in our episode, but we would like to hear your thoughts. So what do you think is the direction that the real estate market is going to right now? Do you think it's going to crash, as some economists are trying to say, or do you think it's going to keep rising? So feel free to share with us your thoughts too. We'd love to hear them. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, watching, whatever it is that you're doing to hear our messages and thoughts. That's it for today. Do you have any other thoughts or anything else, Sean?
Nope, just play the field in front of you. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Play the market that's in front of you.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep going strong.
Thank you. Bye.